Support for Carolina Business Review provided by Grant Thornton. Operating in more than 100 countries, our tax, audit, and advisory professionals specialize in helping companies unlock their growth potential. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of South Carolina, where healthcare is changing for the better. Find out how at ahealthysc.tv. And by Sunoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services, with more than 300 operations in 35 countries.
Spring has sprung in the Carolinas, but metaphorically, in terms of commercial activity, community building, legislative action, it is certainly high summer. Welcome again to the most widely watched source for Carolina business and public policy, seen each week across both states for almost 25 years. I'm Chris William, and what are the issues that matter most? Truly. We'll hear from Michael Smith of Charlotte's Center City Partners, as well as from South Carolina business media publisher Grady Johnson. And later, UNC School of the Arts Chancellor Lindsay Bierman.
Major funding also by Novant Health, bringing you world-class technology, clinicians, and care when and where you need it. The Duke Endowment, a private foundation enriching communities in the Carolinas through higher education, healthcare, rural churches, and children's services. And by Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina. Who's responsible for rising healthcare costs? Join us and many others in a candid discussion at letstalkcost.com. On this edition of Carolina Business Review, Grady Johnson, President, Group Publisher, SC Biz News. Michael Smith, President and CEO of Charlotte Center City Partners. And special guest, Lindsay Bierman, Chancellor of the University of North Carolina School of the Arts. Now, here's Chris William.
Welcome to our program. Guys, welcome back. Grady, good to see you. Michael, it's been too long. Glad you're here.
Thanks. Good to see you, Chris.
You know, we're going to start with you. And is Charlotte a proxy, Michael, in that when you look at the downtown profile of not just Charlotte, but Columbia, Charleston, you could say Asheville, certainly Raleigh, Greenville, South Carolina. I mean, the level of activity, the Crane Index, if you will, is pretty robust. So the question is, have we seen this movie before? Does this end like it did in 08 or 09? Are we that far out with expansion? What do you think?
This has been a great expansion. It is such a defining period for downtowns across the Carolinas. I think what you see right now is, we refer to it as the urban century. And I think that the demographics, the psychographics have changed so much that the investors, the developers are responding to what people demand. And they want to live in walkable, bikeable places, quality urban places. And that's what you're seeing across so many of those towns you just named, because there are great projects going on in all of them. So,
and not to give you a hard time about this, Michael, but we know commercial real estate developers will build if they can find funds.
Yes.
So how is it different this time? Is it because, as you said, folks are looking for a different urban environment?
The cycles are not different. The story will end in a similar way, where eventually demand will stop, funding will dry up, there'll be a correction. That's the way cycles work.
Yeah.
What's different this time is demand. We continue to understand more about building quality urban places. And it's exciting because all of those cities are creating this infrastructure for people. And that's what's so fascinating about the city building business, is building things that are interesting, but what makes great places are people. And that's what we're creating, is that infrastructure.
You know, the Holy City is not exempt from this kind of stuff. Charleston has been, I think, even surprising for Charleston as much activity as, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Grady, but you know, you grew up down there, the business is based in Charleston. Do you think Charleston is at a point where it could get overextended with all of the activity that has gone on there?
You know, we're limited by the water. So the peninsula, if you're talking about Charleston itself, no. Now there's a real change in culture, you know, picking up on what you were just saying. people want to live in these urban centers now, and there's a real fight going on in the suburbs who suddenly realize, oh no, we're urban now. And so the suburbs are really resisting
Daniel
this.
Island, Somerville.
Yeah,
places
Mount
like that.
Pleasant, where I live,
Yeah.
there's a huge fight for infill projects. People do not want it. They'd rather, still it seems as if they'd rather not in my backyard kind of thing. And, but everyone knows that sprawl is not the answer. So there's a real clash of culture going on. And all of these young entrepreneurs moving into these cities, they want to live in these urban places. This is the Richard Florida thing going on. I mean, it's happening big time.
So Michael, we've heard so much about the millennials and Gen
Yes.
Y and all of the things. Are they driving it, or is there something else that's just as important behind this?
Well, millennials, 70 some odd million, as big as the baby boom generation. It is tomorrow's demand. I mean, so we can label them, but yes, that is where we are going to see more renters and tomorrow's buyers and tomorrow's workforce. And it's exciting to see it coming together that way, and how it will play out.
Yeah. Let's take a couple minutes to talk about legislative issues and public policy. Both the General Assembly in North Carolina, the State House in South Carolina are in full swing, both making laws, making policy. Michael, would you expect from the session this year, and not specifics unless you want to really drill down, would you expect in North Carolina in 2015 that the Republicans are they've been accused of overreaching? Do you think this is going to be a different legislative session, and will it be good when we look back on 2015?
Boy, there are so many challenges for our state right now, and so many opportunities. And these are folks that have raised their hand and want to be a part of leadership to move North Carolina to what we need next. So I remain hopeful about having a long session and the stuff that's in front of them.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of opportunities for job growth, and North Carolina has been an engine for that, and we continue to have talent moving here. And we want to give opportunities. We want to grow the tax base. We want to create more opportunity. And we know the playbook. I think a lot of what's in the governor's recommendation makes a ton of sense. And I look forward to us making progress on that.
Do you think North Carolina will find its mojo again in economic development with this new structure in commerce?
I do. What they are creating in commerce is an enhancement to a highly functioning engine. Mm-hmm. We grow jobs really well. Mm-hmm. Is there an opportunity to continue to grow that investment in other parts of the state? Yes, but I don't think it has to be an either or. I think it's a yes and.
Pound for pound, you could argue that South Carolina has beaten North Carolina hands down in economic development, at least for the last 24, maybe 36 months, maybe even longer. Is that because of the governor? Is that because it's just part of the cycle? Who's responsible for sun shining in South Carolina?
Well, I think it's part of you have to look at things cyclically, and I think it's part of the cycle. The pendulum swings back and forth. There's just opportunities that North Carolina took advantage of for many years. That run sort of was over. South Carolina's doing the same thing. And you have to give credit where credit is due. Governor Haley and Bobby Hitt are doing a great job of recruiting. I called Haley the recruiter in chief, and I mean she's out there knocking down the deals. Some of them were set up before she came into office, but some of the most recent ones, I think she gets it's her watch. She gets credit for it.
Let me carve out just the last minute or so. Grady, your group, SC Biz and the Charleston Regional Business Journal, Columbia Regional Business Journal, and GSA in the upstate are putting on a manufacturing conference. And we're not usually in the business of promoting stuff, but we're going to be involved in that with you. Just in about 30 seconds, tell us why this is a landmark event, if you will.
There was just a lot of pent-up demand for a major manufacturing conference in South Carolina. Historically, with textiles, we were sort of the epicenter for a long time. That went away. Now's the time to do that again. It just happens to be the right time, right place to put on a conference like this. I was lucky enough to team up with the SCRA to help plan it. Mm-hmm. Those guys are like the A team, so that when they call you on the phone and say, hey, you want to sit on a panel, people say yes, and amazing speakers. and the momentum has been incredible. We've put a career fair, high school career fair, as part of it, so kids can come in and feel that vibe.
And what's the date and how many?
April 14 and 15 in Greenville at TD Center.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks, guys. Stay with us, sir.
Yes.
Guest coming up here in a second. We feel like we want to tell you a little bit about what's coming up this spring and this summer. Some really great dialogue stacked up. We have Tim Arnold, the president of Colonial Life out of Columbia, a fairly new president, has not been on this dialogue before. Also, Bob McNair, a Rutherford County native, but the owner of the Houston Texans. This North Carolina boy, made very well, is coming back to our program in May. Tom Ross, UNC system president, will be on, and in a very interesting dialogue, both the North Carolina and the South Carolina transportation secretaries, Tony Tata and Janet Oakley, together talking about transportation in the Carolinas. John Skvarla, North Carolina Commerce Secretary, many more, including North Carolina Speaker of the House Tim Moore, will be here too. This is all coming up. A former UNC system chancellor once mused that it might be more important to have an MFA rather than an MBA. The man who said that was the immediate predecessor to our guest. We welcome now our guest, the UNC System School of the Arts Chancellor, the new Chancellor, Lindsay Bierman. Lindsay, welcome to the Carolinas.
Thank you, Chris. It's great to be here.
I was talking about the effervescent maestro John Mauceri before you. And John made the argument that it was more important to think creatively than it was to think the traditional business way. You seem like you agree with that easily.
I totally agree with that. I actually have a degree in architecture, so go figure. But I do think that when people ask me, what can I do with an MFA, I say, anything you want. That's the point.
So let's talk about you just for a second as a springboard. So you classically trained as an architect. You were a publisher. You were somebody that was in branding. You have tremendous design experience. Mm-hmm. How are you going to marry that to academic administration in the UNC system?
That's a good question. I get that a lot. The position at Southern, well, let me back up and say Southern Living is a diversified multimedia brand, and it has a massive scale and reach, 18 million consumers every month. My position required creative oversight and vision, brand stewardship and expansion and strategic development of the brand, and financial performance and growth. Sound familiar?
It does.
So those skills directly apply to what I'm doing now. And to be honest, putting together a magazine like Southern Living every month there's a lot of theater involved in magazine publishing.
Yeah. Okay. Michael?
Well, I think it's fascinating. I love this topic because I think the American economy is moving more and more to a place that requires innovation.
Yeah.
And the roots of innovation is curiosity, experimentation, which drives innovation. So how do you think this school can prepare North Carolina to be a different place when it comes to innovation?
Our students have to go through an incredibly rigorous training program that involves traditional academics, but also real world problems that they're facing from the minute they set foot on campus. So I see them as having qualities that any business leader would value, such as meeting deadlines, facing an audience. So there's an alumni who works now as an executive at Google. He was in our drama program, and he said that he is the go-to guy at Google for presentations because he can just turn it out. Budgeting time and money, because when they're putting on full stage productions, you've got very limited resources and you have a specific amount of time that you have to work with, and the show has to go on no matter what happens. So when things go wrong, they know how to improvise, they know how to keep pushing through and get things done. They're just the most intense, focused students I've ever seen in my life. Because by the time they get there, they know exactly what they want to do with their lives, and so they're laser focused on that.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any programs underway to sort of to formally cross-pollinate across the different areas in the university, like say science and technology students and art students? Are you guys mixing them together somehow?
We would like to do a lot more of that. We're exploring some joint degree opportunities with NC State. Because I think that there's our faculty at the School of the Arts and their faculty in the computer engineering department have been talking about entertainment technology and advances in entertainment technology, and I think that there's a lot that we could do together. I also think that if something that you might not expect that we would be focused on, but something like gaming, I think could be the future of performance. And there's a lot of narrative and storytelling that we could do to improve the quality of many games.
Lindsay, you're not, you know, I love the idea of, and I love the practice that goes on at the School of the Arts in Winston-Salem, but you're not insulated from the same challenges that not just the UNC system has, but the higher ed has, and that is the unsustainable arc of the cost of education.
Yeah.
How do you address that?
It's a very difficult question, and I have a lot to learn in that regard. But what I have seen so far is that at the School of the Arts in particular, the school had a lot of turnover in the fundraising office. And I think we have to be much more creative about how we raise money and how we are messaging to the next generation of philanthropists. Because we're relying on a group of people who made the school run for so many years. And now as we look to find that next generation and adjust our programs to meet the needs of the workforce, but also to meet their philanthropic interests. That's really important. But I also think developing public-private partnerships with companies like Cirque du Soleil, with whom we have a relationship already, so that we can become the research arm for them. I think that there are a lot of opportunities in association with our design and production school, but also with our film school in particular.
The Rhode Island School of Design uses a lot of sponsored studio work.
Yeah.
And it's one of their big fundraising models.
Yeah.
Is there anything like that where the School of the Arts could be working with theater groups in Charlotte and in Raleigh, and Columbia, and Charleston?
We had about 30 companies on campus a couple of weeks ago to interview our students from design and production, and I talked to a lot of the scene shop heads. Some of them are international organizations. I actually think that there's a huge opportunity for to joint venture with one of those companies. I think it would be along the lines of a sponsored studio, but even on a much larger scale, where we can, say, help regional theater companies who could never afford to build a set on their own. The sets get built here in Winston-Salem. It's a private company that's fueled by our students and our alumni, and then those sets are built here, they travel around the country, and then they come back here to go into storage, and they can go out and be rentals. That's just one example that I think we could do. I think we could have a film production company through our School of Filmmaking. You know, one of the things on my wish list would be to help incentivize the film industry through the use of our facilities, if we could do that. It seems like it might be something that would be more appealing in the legislature.
It's a really good idea.
You know, I hear a lot about scientific research collaboratives between different universities and what have you. Does the same thing go on in the arts?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Cirque du Soleil, that I referenced earlier, we were talking to them about what we can do for them, because one of their greatest costs, of course, is training recent graduates to perform the jobs that they need. And there's a huge void in rigging and automation behind the scenes. So all of the acrobatics that you see when you go see one of their performances, there's a tremendous amount of technological development behind all of that. And so we want to prepare our students for that, and we've talked about partnering with Cirque in ways that we could actually use our facilities to do exactly what you're saying. So it would be technology research in the arts.
So let's go back to something you made a mention about film incentives, and the North Carolina General Assembly. Many in opposition have said have gone backwards around film incentives. This is not a leading question. I have an idea where you come down on it. Lindsay, number one, where do you come down on it, and what would be a reasonable dialogue for North Carolina public policymakers to have about film incentives as economic development tool?
Yeah. You can probably guess where I stand on
Just
the
a
film
little.
incentives issue. So that's predictable. But I do think I don't know. I would like the School of the Arts and for me personally to play a larger role in telling the story of why I think it's important to have film incentives in some form. You know, even if there's no appetite for the way that they were, and that's fine, I think that there are other ways that we can look at it. By leveraging our film school, for example, which is ranked number 13 in the world, and we have tremendous connections and industry networks that we could use and leverage right here in the state of North Carolina and right on our campus. You know, there's some precedent for that. Matt Weiner, the creator of Mad Men, parked himself and his crew on our campus for 6 weeks. They used our sound stage. It's one of the best sound stages out there. And they made a donation to the school, and he's been marketing for the school ever since. And he has no connection to North Carolina or Winston-Salem. So that was a huge benefit.
But why did he go to UNCSA then? What was the draw, and how do you replicate that?
Well, I mean, that's a really good example. It was just the cost to house the crew here. And here's the benefit to the economy that no one seems to talk about. I mean, he's a very powerful director. He could go anywhere, but he chose to come here because the scale of the city is very manageable. It's easy to get crews in and out. You can rent things easily. You can house people easily. But the benefit to the economy, they're eating in our restaurants, they're buying lumber at our hardware stores, they're buying extension cords and light bulbs, and they're using caterers, and they're renting houses. And we have a huge growing presence at Sundance now, and I've talked to a lot of alums who want to come back here and work here and produce films here. It's just a good working environment for them. You know, trying to get permits in Los Angeles or New York City and trying to get around, it's just the logistics are a nightmare.
I think it's broadly misunderstood, too, how great these jobs are and how much of it is our citizens and our base.
Yeah.
And that although the work is project-based, that's the way this industry operates, where you'll be on a project for so long and then you'll be on the bench for a while.
Yeah.
And the more that we want to keep that group employed, that we have to find ways to continue to make North Carolina competitive. There's a reason that Georgia has put new incentives on the table. I mean, they see this as very attractive.
So is that just lost money? That's just lost money.
Well, I think at one point we had a group of people renting houses, eating in restaurants, shopping in stores, buying wine. You
saw it in Charlotte. Our downtown was a set.
Again
and again and again.
Yeah. So that's if they're not doing that, that's money lost to the economy, regardless of what you think about incentives in general. But I do think that incentives doesn't necessarily have to be just in the form of tax rebates. It could be through the use of facilities, which is an idea that I'd like to explore.
We have about 2 minutes left, Grady.
Lindsay, I see hear a lot of PR about STEM education now. I mean, it's the golden child, and I have a concern that the pendulum will swing too far, and the arts will get left behind. Don't you think that you guys in the arts need to go on a PR offensive about the value of the arts?
I'm on it. I wrote an op-ed about this recently, saying that I think there's a letter missing from STEM, and it needs to spell STEAM with an A for arts. The arts, people probably don't realize that the arts is a $500 billion business in the United States. So to put that in perspective, it's just a little bit less than the construction industry and a little bit more than travel and tourism. So $500 billion. And people tend to think of arts in a very narrowly focused way as nonprofits, but actually it's arts and entertainment, and they call it show business because it's a very profitable business. And it's, I think about all of these, Disney was on our campus last week, and that's a global organization. That is the arts. So I think there's tremendous opportunity, and I think it makes me crazy that the A is left out of STEM.
Well, you have some runway here. You can change that, and it sounds like you are. Lindsay, welcome to the Carolinas, and I know they're glad to have you in Winston-Salem.
Thank you. I love the town. It's been a great, great place to be.
Well, I hope it's the beginning of a great thing, and again, welcome. Good to have you here. Please come back.
Thank you.
Okay. Grady, best of luck in your manufacturing conference.
Thank you.
April 14th?
April 14 and 15.
Greenville.
Yep.
TD Center. Michael, good to have you here.
Thanks. Good to be with you, Chris.
Thanks. Come back, please.
We will.
Sooner. Thank you for watching our program. Check out our website, carolinabusinessreview.org. Until next week, I'm Chris William. Good night.
Major funding for Carolina Business Review was provided by the Duke Endowment, a private foundation enriching communities in the Carolinas through higher education, healthcare, rural churches, and children's services. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of North Carolina. Who's responsible for rising healthcare costs? Join us and many others in a candid discussion at letstalkcost.com. Grant Thornton. Operating in more than 100 countries, our tax, audit, and advisory professionals specialize in helping companies unlock their growth potential. Novant Health, bringing you world-class technology, clinicians, and care, when and where you need it. Sunoco, a global manufacturer of consumer and industrial packaging products and provider of packaging services, with more than 300 operations in 35 countries. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of South Carolina, where healthcare is changing for the better. Find out how at ahealthysc.tv. And by viewers like you. Thank you. Promotional consideration provided by Business North Carolina Magazine. For more information, visit carolinabusinessreview.org.